All right, well, it's Monday again, and I thank you for tuning in this week. Last week we introduced the idea of boundaries, especially in the context of relationship, and I hope in that context you had a really wonderful weekend as you celebrated Easter. I hope you're able to get together with friends, family, that you were able to get to church and celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. That is so central to our faith as Christians. But with that, I want to kind of circle back to the boundaries issue. You know, we introduced it last week. We talked about it a little bit. Showed, kind of explained, I hope explained what boundaries are. Kind of want to explain what boundaries are not this week. People, when we have clients come in, or even just friends or family come and ask me about the boundaries. What are boundaries? Why do we need boundaries? How does it work? Doesn't it cause this? We hear some myths that actually, as I went through this book that I introduced you last week, Boundaries, actually went through in preparation for last week's video, and actually found a lot of the myths that I've heard. A lot of the misconceptions that I've heard are actually probably fairly common because they're actually included in this book. One of those myths is that if you set boundaries, you're being selfish. Now, people who are having boundaries set against them are getting pushed back because they're used to having the access be a certain level. Even if it's unhealthy, they have that access. They want to keep that access. So they're going to probably tell you, well, you're just being selfish and you're just being a jerk. No, you're taking care of your health. When you take a stand and say, this is who I am, this is my boundaries, this is what I will do, this is what I won't do, this is my beliefs, this is who I am, you need to respect that, and people don't respect it, that's a boundaries issue. Boundaries are healthy for you because they protect you from the influence of others. They protect you from becoming somebody that you're not. They protect you from being run over by people who might seem to be well-mannered or well-natured, but are operating out of their own selfishness. And you know what? I can say that because I've operated out of my selfishness. And it's not a judgment thing. This is just a truth of the matter. Sometimes we act with poor boundaries out of selfishness. And it becomes our responsibility, once we recognize those things, to correct those shortcomings, to correct those falsities. So when you set boundaries, you're not being selfish. You're actually being proactive to make sure that you are the best you can be. That you are operating and becoming the person that God created you to be. Like we said last week, we're designed to live in the context of relationship. We're not designed to be combined into one person. We're designed to be individuals living together, operating as separate individuals through autonomy towards one common goal. In marriage, for example, yes, the two flesh become one, but the man and the woman each have their own specific jobs, their own specific purposes. They're two people coming together. They're two strands. Yeah, they're in the one strand of marriage, but they're two individual people. And a lot of times in marriage, the problems that we end up seeing and people coming in for help is because one spouse is trying to push their ideas, their feelings, their personality on the other spouse, and the other spouse is losing their identity. That's not a recipe for health. That's a recipe for dominance and brokenness. So in marriage, we have to respect those boundaries. And it's not selfish to say, no, this is who I am. You need to respect that, and now let's operate with the understanding of who each other is. So it's not selfish to set boundaries. It's also not a sign of disobedience. I hear this one all the time. Well, if I set a boundary with my parent, if I set a boundary with my grandparent, if I tell them no, then I'm being disobedient, I'm being disrespectful. That's not necessarily the case, okay? There are times where we act out of disobedience and we say, no, I'm not doing that. That's not what we're talking about. That's not a boundary, that's defiance. Okay? A boundary is saying, I'm going to set this up because this is what is in my best interest for my health, for my spiritual, emotional, relational, psychological health. I'm setting this up because this is who I am. I am my own individual. I am me, not X's daughter or son or granddaughter or grandson. I am me, the individual, with my own ideas, feelings, thoughts, purposes, promises, and designed by God. So when we grow up and we leave our parents' house, we have taken all the lessons that we've been learned, we've taken the context we've been given, and now we have to operate with that. And sometimes in that, the lessons that we've learned have been damaging. And allowing the damaging influences to continue in our life is only going to continue the damage in our life. So if we have the unfortunate reality that we came from a background where our family was broken, where we have brokenness in our parents, and the relationship is not healthy, you're not going to find health by operating the same path that has brought you to the brokenness. You can still be in relationship with those people, but you have to set boundaries. You have to say, this is where I am, this is where you are, here's where I begin, here's where you end. And setting those boundaries is not disobedience, it's actually an act of love. Because without boundaries, what's going to end up happening is you're going to say, I hate you, I want nothing to do with you, and you're just going to completely destroy the relationship and push it out. If anything, boundaries actually help save relationship, create love, and create more obedience of honoring your father and mother, as it says in the Bible. So don't think that boundaries, if you're saying boundaries, you're being disobedient. You're not. You're actually being obedient to God. You know, if you set boundaries, I'm going to hurt others. This is another myth I hear. Well, those that are hurt by boundaries that are set are those that are actually the real reason why you should be setting boundaries in the first place. Because they're taking property that is not theirs like it is theirs. They're taking stuff from you that is not theirs to be taking. It's yours to be living on, living with, to be shared. But when people come in and they don't respect your boundaries, or they've been pushing back and causing you to be worn out, broken, gaslighting you, making you feel like you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, like you need more, you need to be better more than you are, that you're not accepted. It's because they are pushing their agenda on you. And setting boundaries against that is letting them know, this is who I am, this is how I'm going to operate, and that if you want to be in a relationship with me, here are the guidelines, because this is what is healthy. So when you have people who get hurt by you setting boundaries, it's most likely because they have boundary issues themselves. And you setting boundaries with them might actually be the wake-up call they need to set boundaries themselves so that they can find the health and the healing from the brokenness in their life that they've been searching for without even realizing they've been searching for it sometimes. So yeah, you might get people upset when you set boundaries, but it's for your own good and their own good as well. The myth that if I'm setting boundaries because I'm angry. Boundaries have nothing to do with anger. And if you're feeling anger, it's probably because you didn't set boundaries soon enough or well enough. Because anger, as we talked about, our emotions are the warning lights on the dash of our life to let us know what's going on. If you're feeling anger, there's a reason for it. If you're feeling anger towards somebody, there's probably a good reason for that, and that's probably because you didn't have good boundaries with that person in that situation. You didn't understand where you ended and they began, or where they didn't understand where they ended and you began. Just feeling like they had free reign to do whatever. I know personally, if someone comes, and last week I talked about a dog pooping on, allowing your dog to poop on someone else's yard. If I look out my front door or my front window, I see someone walking through my front yard or allowing their dog to poop in my front yard, especially if they don't clean it, I get angry. Well, why? Because I don't have a fence around my front yard. People can come through my front yard as they please. Now, most people have the common sense and the courtesy to not walk through my yard, but sometimes people walk or allow their dogs to go through my front yard. And if their dog is pooping in my yard, I'm getting angry. I'm angry because there's not a boundary there to keep that dog from defecating on my lawn. I sound like an old man in saying that, but that's the fact of the matter. The anger is there because of the lack of boundary. So if you're feeling angry, you're not saying the boundary because of anger, you're saying the boundary to prevent anger in the future. And let's see here, when others set boundaries, it hurts me. It injures me when others people set boundaries with me, so I'm not going to do that. I stumble over this because being a counselor, being a pastor, being someone who's in this field, this is something that I've said, I've heard, but really thinking about it, if you feel that way, you need to kind of fix your own boundaries. Because if you feel like someone else is setting boundaries and someone else is saying, this is who I am, it means that you're not respecting them. That you're putting your identity in somebody else. As a Christian, our identity is in Christ. And to put our identity in someone else other than Christ is a problem. So if you have these going on, you need to take a look at, okay, where do I begin and where do others begin? How do I operate in that? And finally, boundaries are permanent. You know what? Boundaries don't have to be permanent. Okay? We need to have boundaries in our life. Yes. We need to have healthy boundaries in our life. Absolutely. Do we always have to have boundaries? Yes. But do those boundaries have to be the same? No. No, because there might be people in your life that your relationship is broken. Their life might be full of brokenness. And allowing them into your life might bring you down instead of helping bring them up. We're to be a light in the world, but sometimes people just don't want to accept that light. So setting a boundary with them when they're broken to help them heal doesn't mean you have to have that same boundary once they've healed. Or if you have a broken relationship, you don't have to keep the same boundaries once that relationship has been healed. Because ultimately, you've set boundaries, you found the healing, and through that healing, the relationship has gotten better. You can look at changing those boundaries. It's kind of like, let's go back to your house. You have a fence up right now. It might be a wood fence. Well, that fence might get outdated, might get knocked down. In fact, you might buy more land and need to expand your fence. You need to push those boundaries back. You may even have to push those boundaries in. So just because your boundaries are one thing right now, doesn't mean that's what they have to be forever. The important thing is that boundaries have to be there consistently. If we don't have healthy boundaries, if we don't continue to have boundaries, we're going to end up with conflict. We're going to end up with brokenness. We're going to end up with individuals who just run roughshod, or even us running roughshod over others. So last week we looked at what boundaries are. This week we looked at what they're not. I hope that this has helped you understand boundaries a little bit more and encouraged you to set boundaries in your own life, to set boundaries in your relationships, set boundaries at work. Set boundaries with your kids. In so many aspects of our life, boundaries are healthy because they, like the guardrails on the side of the road, they keep us from going off course. They keep us from coming to harm. They help keep us going properly. So go properly this week. Be healthy this week. Grow in relationship. And I hope that this has helped you. And I hope that you'll tune in next week for our next Mental Health Monday. Thank you for watching. God bless you. Me and Abby, we love you. And we can't wait to interact with you more in the future. We love you. God bless.